Let's now discuss the skeletal muscle anatomy. Now, in the skeletal muscle anatomy, you don't only have the skeleton and the muscle itself. We also have structures such as the tendon, aponeurosis, and the retinaculum. Tendon attaches a muscle to the bone. It is in the shape of a strap or a band. On the other hand, aponeurosis is a broad sheet-like tendons. And lastly, the retinaculum is a band of connective tissue that holds down the tendons at each wrist and ankle that you will see later. Next, we have the points of attachment of muscles. We have the origin or the head, insertion, and the belly. Origin is the most stationary end of the muscle. Usually, it is the proximal extremities. Insertion, on the other hand, is the end of the muscle attached to the bone undergoing the greatest movement, usually the distal extremities. Belly is the part of the muscle between the origin and the insertion, which is usually the bulkiest part of the muscle. So as you can see here, we have the tendon. We also have the belly, or the bulkiest part of the muscles. We also have the origin, which you can find in the proximal areas or the proximal extremities. Next is the insertion, which you can find usually in the distal extremities, and in this case in the radius. So as you can see here, the biceps brachii actually has two heads. That's why the origin of the long head is in here and the origin of the short head is in here. Then the insertion of the short head can be found in the radius, particularly in the radial tuberosity. So we also have what you call the muscle interactions. Muscles function in groups. Groups are arranged to provide opposing movements. One is agonist, the second is the antagonist. Agonist is a muscle that accomplishes a certain movement. Siya yung nag-a-accomplish ng movement na yon. For example, biceps brachii flexes or bends the elbow. So pag nag-bend ka ng elbow, ang agonist mo ay si biceps brachii. On the other hand, antagonist is a muscle acting in opposition to an agonist or yung opposite ng agonist, opposite movement. For example, nag-bend ang elbow mo. Ang agonist is the biceps brachii. Ngayon, ang antagonist nun, which is the opposite of the action being performed, is the triceps brachii. Siya yung antagonist ngayon. So, agonist and antagonist contract alternately. Meaning, si agonist magko-contract, si antagonist magre-relax. Okay? Aside from that, we also have muscles that tend to function in groups to accomplish a specific movements. Those are the synergists, the prime movers, and the fixators. Synergists are members of a group of muscles working together to produce a movement. For example, in elbow flexion, hindi lang naman biceps brachii yung nandun. Meron siyang mga kasama. Example of synergists includes the biceps brachii and the brachialis in elbow flexion. They help each other. That is why synergists sila. Next, we have the prime mover. Prime mover is a muscle among a group of synergists that plays the major role in accomplish the desired movement. Example, brachialis in flexing the elbow. Although the biceps brachii is the strongest flexor of the elbow, hindi siya yung chief. Kasi meron tayong tatlong nagfe-flex ng elbow. We have the brachialis, the brachioradialis, and the biceps brachii. Now, as a prime mover, mas prime mover ang brachialis kaysa sa biceps brachii. Kasi ito, chief siya. Ito, strong lang. In the future, you will know that. Next, fixators are muscles that hold one bone in place while another bone is moved. In short, siya yung tagapigil ng pag-ibo ng isang part ng ating katawan. Example, muscles of the scapula act as fixators to hold the scapula in place while other muscles contract to move the humerus. Kasi pag walang fixator, kapag once na gumalaw ka, ay lahat gagalaw din. And kapag gumalaw yan lahat, may possibility na hindi mo magagawa yung dapat mong gawin. Now, let's go on with the muscle nomenclature. It is the system of naming skeletal muscles organs. Well, muscles are named according to many things. First is location. For example, the pectoralis muscles, because they are found in the chest. And another term for chest are the pectorals. Another example is the zygomaticus major, wherein natatagpuan naman siya sa zygomaticus bone. Next would be the origin and insertion. For example, the brachioradialis muscle, kasi ang kanyang origin is nasa arm, tapos ang kanyang insertion ay nasa radius. Next is the number of origins. For example, biceps brachii has 2 origins. Kaya siya tinawag na biceps kasi bi meaning 2. Another example is the triceps. It has 3 origins, 3 heads. Kaya siya tinawag na triceps. Next is the function. For example, flexor digitorum, which flexes the digits. Flexor meaning flexion, digitorum meaning digits. That's why it flexes the digits. Next is the size. For example, is gluteus maximus. Maximus means the largest. And the gluteus maximus, or our buttocks, is the largest muscle of the body. Next is we have the shape. Example is the deltoid. It is triangular in shape, yung muscle na yun, kaya deltoid ang tawag sa kanya. Next is the orientation of their fasciculi. Example, rectus means straight or parallel to the midline, like the rectus abdominis. Let me show you an example of that muscle. So, for the deltoids, it's in here. Medyo triangular siya in shape, kaya ganun yung tawag sa kanya. Tapos, yung rectus abdominis is ito yung nandito. Pa-straight yung orientation niya. Hindi man kita dito, pero we also have the transversus abdominis kung saan pa higa naman yung lines niya. Kaya siya tinawag na transversus.